Today, we are diving deep into a really critical chapter of Jean Rhys's incredible novel, Wide Sargasso Sea. We're going to watch a fragile marriage start to completely unravel, all because of secrets, accusations, and one single, fateful meeting that really changes everything.
So, let's start with this question. What's the real price of destroying a marriage? I mean, can you put a number on it? Or is the cost something deeper? Something like the absolute poison of mistrust, the sting of betrayal, and maybe most tragically, the consequences of just not being able to see what's right in front of your face.
All right, here's our game plan. First, we'll look at a mysterious summons to a place called Massacre. Then, we'll get into Daniel Cosway's side of the story. After that, we'll see the secret that costs £500. We'll break down how power gets totally turned upside down, and we'll wrap up by really digging into the main theme here, an outsider's blindness.
Okay, so our story kicks off right here. We've got Rochester, our English husband, trying to settle into his new life at Grandboy. But then, he gets a second letter from a guy named Daniel Cosway. And this time, it's not a friendly request. No, it's a demand. Come see me now.
You can just imagine. Rochester is immediately on edge. This is a guy who's used to being in control, right? So getting summoned by a total stranger really throws him for a loop. And what does he do? Exactly what an outsider would do. He starts trying to gather some intel. He turns to a servant, Amelie, and asks, "So, who is this Daniel Cosway guy?" And right away, things get confusing. Emily's answer is a perfect example of the kind of local nuance that Rochester just doesn't get. First, she says, he lives like white people, which in that colonial world is supposed to sound like a compliment. But then almost in the same breath, she just says, a bad man. So from the get-go, we know Daniel is this really ambiguous, untrustworthy character. So, with Emily's strange endorsement ringing in his ears, Rochester goes. And the setting here is just, wow, it's so important. He leaves his lush, beautiful estate and travels to this tiny, sweltering, one-room shack. And where is it? In a town with the totally ominous name of Massacre. You can just feel it, right? The oppressive heat, the claustrophobic room, the name of the town, it's all screaming that something bad is about to happen.
All right, Section 2, Daniel Cosway's story. This is the confrontation itself. Rochester walks in, and bam, Daniel just launches into it. There's no hello, no small talk, just a flood of pure bitterness and accusation.
And this quote right here, it gets right to the heart of Daniel's anger. He's talking about his own father, Alexander Cosway. He says his father called him a money grubber and literally threw an inkstand at him. This isn't just some sad backstory. This is the fuel for all his resentment. It's a deep wound, and he is absolutely ready to use it as a weapon.
So with all that bitterness brewing, Daniel just unloads on Rochester. He hits him with a series of what he calls truths. 1. You've been tricked by everyone. 2. He claims Christophine, who Antoinette trusts completely, is a master of Obeah, dark magic. And then the knockout punch. 3. He says Antoinette has a sexual past with another man. Every single one of these claims is like a drop of poison, perfectly designed to drip into the cracks of Rochester's own insecurities and his complete blindness to this new world.
So now we get to the real heart of it, the £500 secret. Just as Rochester's head is spinning from all these accusations, Daniel finally shows his hand. See, this isn't just about getting revenge. Oh no, this is about business. Because as it turns out, every so-called truth comes with a price tag.
And that price tag? £500. That's a huge amount of money back then. For £500, Daniel says he'll keep his mouth shut. And just like that, you realize this isn't a conversation anymore. It's a shakedown. It's blackmail. Yep, it's straight up blackmail. The threat is crystal clear. Pay up, or I'll tell everyone these stories about Antoinette. He's basically turned her past into a weapon he can use to get rich. And really, this whole thing shines a light on a huge theme in the book, how money just poisons everything. Think about it. Rochester married Antoinette for her money. Daniel's blackmailing Rochester for money. Even other characters like Christophine stay single just to protect their own money. It's like this obsession with wealth has seeped into and corrupted every single relationship. Okay, let's step back for a second and look at the bigger picture here, at the power dynamics, because what's happening in this tiny, hot room is a huge deal. The whole colonial power structure gets flipped on its head. The English master, yeah, he's not in charge anymore. And to really get why this is so radical, you have to remember where Rochester comes from. He's a product of a world built on patriarchal control.
He's an upper-class Englishman. He's been taught his whole life that he's the one who holds the power, who gives the orders, who controls the property and the people around him. That's his default setting. But look at this contrast. Back at his own home, Grand Boys Rochester is the king of his castle. He can ignore his wife, his servants, whoever he wants. But here, in Daniel's tiny room, on Daniel's turf, he has no choice. He is forced to just sit there and listen to a man he considers totally beneath him. The script has been completely flipped.
All right, our last section. This is where it all comes together. Because this whole power shift is tied directly to Rochester's biggest flaw, his outsider's blindness. He is so out of his depth, so unable to understand this new world. And the book shows us this using some really powerful animal symbolism. First, let's look at Antoinette. Earlier in the story, she sees a crow, and for her, it's not just a bird. She instinctively says, that is for betrayal. She's connected to this place. She understands its language, its science.
Now compare that to Rochester. After this absolutely gut-wrenching meeting with Daniel, he sees an animal too, a black and white goat with these weird slanting eyes. He sees it, but he doesn't see it. To him, it's just a goat. He is totally, utterly blind to what it actually means.
And here's what he's missing. That goat is Daniel. It's a living symbol of him. The black and white coat, that's his mixed race heritage. Its strange, contrary nature, that's Daniel's own duplicity. I mean, the world is practically screaming a warning right in Rochester's face, but because he's such an outsider, he just doesn't have the dictionary to translate it. He can't read the signs. And that leaves us with a really haunting question, doesn't it? The tragedy for Rochester isn't just that he was lied to, it's that he was culturally blind. He couldn't see the truth even when it was staring him in the face. And it makes you wonder, if you can't read the signs of the world you're in, if you don't understand the people or the culture, how can you ever really know who to trust? All right, let's dive into an absolutely pivotal and emotionally raw scene from Jean Rhys's masterpiece, Wide Sargasso Sea. We are literally going to watch a marriage come apart at the seams in a single night through the lens of this incredible book. You know, the whole scene just starts on a knife's edge. Antoinette makes this desperate, direct plea to her husband, Rochester, and this question, so simple and so raw, it just sets the stage for a confrontation that is going to change absolutely everything between them. So here's how we're going to break this all down. We'll start with how the conversation begins to spiral out of control. Then, we're going to dig into the hidden truths in the scene's symbolism, unpack Antoinette's attempt to tell her true story, look at a really haunting parallel to her mother, and then finally, we arrive at the point of no return. Okay, so picture this. We're on the veranda at Culebri Estate. The oppressive heat of the Caribbean day has finally given way to this even more oppressive darkness, and it's just thick with the sound of insects and, of course, unspoken resentment. So Antoinette asks him that direct question, why do you hate me? And what does he do? He lies. He tells her he doesn't, that he's just worried about her. But we, the readers, get to see his inner thoughts, which reveal this chilling coldness that his words are trying so hard to hide. Right from the jump, the trust is gone. Now this is where things get really interesting. The setting itself, the environment, it basically becomes a character in the story. Rhys uses it to signal this massive shift away from logic and reason and towards something much more dangerous, much more primal. I mean, think about this incredibly powerful, symbolic act that happens right at the start of the scene. Rochester literally pushes aside a telescope, a tool of European exploration, of reason, of charting the unknown, and he replaces it with a decanter of rum. He is actively choosing to surrender to the intoxicating, enigmatic, and totally irrational world of the Caribbean night. And what's wild is that even Rochester feels the danger of this moment. He knows, instinctively, that this darkness is not the place for a rational discussion. But does that stop him? Nope. He keeps pouring the rum and he keeps listening, basically just handing over control to the night. So, in response to Rochester's accusations, which, by the way, have been fueled by this nasty letter from her vengeful half-brother Daniel, Antoinette finally tries to tell her version of the truth. She calls it her true story. Her story is just, well, it's a cascade of tragedies. It's not a simple, neat narrative. It's this portrait of a childhood that was just defined by loss, by being an outcast, her mother's public humiliation, and this deep, deep-seated sorrow that has followed her entire life.
And this one detail just says it all, doesn't it? It so brilliantly illustrates her desperation for some kind of clarity and support. In her memory, she finds more comfort, more of an answer, in the solid, tangible shape of a metal handrail than she can find in the evasive, cold words of her own husband.
But see, her story is fractured by trauma. She can't tell it straight. She just skips over the hardest parts. And this fragmentation, which is born of her pain, only deepens Rochester's suspicion. He doesn't see trauma, he sees dishonesty, and so he doubts her even more. And this all builds to a truly chilling moment in the text, where Antoinette's tragic past seems to literally replay itself, right there on the veranda. So as her story is unraveling, she describes watching her own mother, who was broken, powerless, and considered mad, being physically handled and kissed by her male caretaker. It's a memory of ultimate powerlessness.
And then, just moments, after she shares this traumatic memory, Rochester reenacts the very same scene with Antoinette herself. As she grows quiet and limp, he lifts her up and kisses her, casting himself in the exact same role of the man who holds all the power.
So you see, this is so much more than just a bad memory popping up. She isn't just remembering her mother's fate. She's actively beginning to live it. The pattern is repeating right in front of our eyes.
And that leads us to the climax of the scene. This is where words are said and actions are taken that can never, ever be undone. The conversation is over. Something else is about to begin. He strips her of her own name, Antoinette, and he imposes this new English identity on her, Bertha. It's an act of total erasure. It's not just a nickname. And in her exhausted, defeated state, she seems to just accept it.
So what do you do? I mean, really? Your true story has been rejected. Your very name has been stolen from you. What move do you have left to make? What can you possibly do?
Her response, it's quiet, it's simple, and it's absolutely fateful. She stops talking. She stops trying to explain. She takes action. Because what's in the wine is Christophine's Obeah potion. This is a complete and total rejection of Rochester's world. She has given up on daylight, on reason, on trying to make him understand with words. Instead, she turns to dark, enchanting, local magic. So, let's just pull this all together. What this entire scene masterfully illustrates is the complete collapse of communication. It shows the power of symbolism in this battle between two cultures, and it pinpoints that tragic moment a person gives up on being heard and turns instead to darker, more desperate forces. It really leaves us with a provocative final thought, doesn't it? What happens when our own true stories are rejected? What desperate measures do we take when we feel like we have no other voice left?